This is the End of the Road podcast with your host, Michael Coco. Exploring the horizons we never touch because we're already there.
Welcome, and thanks for listening. Tonight, we're enjoying part 2 of our continued reimagination of the Oracle of Delphi, this time with Cara and Melissa and their wonderful new Jungian Oracle deck. And last episode, we experienced sort of the ubiquitous nature of oracles in sort of the modern communication environment. And the Oracle deck for me takes us even one step further by allowing us to contact and connect with the dream world through these wonderful archetypal images that are presented in the deck. Truly, oracles are all around us, and every set of lips tells our collective story. And I encourage you to find out more about Melissa and Cara on their respective websites. Melissa, of course, is the curator of the wonderful The Night is Young website. That's Jung, of course. And Cara also has a wonderful website with all of her very interesting art as well. And without further ado, here's Melissa and Cara to talk about their dreaming oracle. So whose idea was it to come up with this Jungian-based oracle deck for dreams, or the dreaming oracle? Which one of you started this mischief?
I think there's a good backstory with this.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
You go, you tell.
So about 12 years ago, I came to America and I was really interested in dreams, and I was spending a lot of time painting my dreams. And I wanted to sort of meet like-minded people in the area. And I opened up this little small Marin County newspaper, and in it there was an advert for a dream group, which we wouldn't find things like that in the UK. So it was extremely exciting. And I joined it. And that's how I met Melissa, because she was someone else who had joined the group. And it was run by this lovely lady called Mimi Calpestri. So Melissa and I met that way through doing our dreams together. And we continued working on our dreams for the next couple of years or so. Is that right, Melissa?
Well, actually, it was like sporadic communication, but we we continued to work on our dreams really more after we started the deck. I think it was on and off communication there for a while, but yeah, we continued to work on our dreams individually. Absolutely.
So what were you trying to achieve with the Oracle deck in terms of Carl Jung's work? What was sort of the inspiration behind it?
I wasn't taking a dream and then illustrating the dream that was coming out. Because I was working with the unconscious, my paintings were kind of revealing what was coming up for me during a particular week. And so there'd be a relationship between my dreams and the painting. And then when Melissa and I would get together and work through our dreams, this sort of magical synergies began to happen where the themes that were coming up in my dreams were the same as Melissa's. So there was this really nice parallel, which worked with the card that I was painting anyway. So it was a really exciting process. There's lots of synchronicity involved. And what was lovely about that is we were really held in the whole process of it. It just became more about this transformational place for us both, rather than the end product. We were going on this journey together, and with it helping each other grow.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. So how did I'm curious that like these images that you created along with the words that are in those. So some of them, I mean, you talked about your own subjective dreams, but are they reflected, in sort of Carl Jung's collective unconsciousness, sort of bigger archetypes, or how does it all fit in so that it becomes an oracle that everybody can sort of participate in?
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's a really good question. And um, absolutely, there are the themes that we are struggling with personally or working with personally are also collective themes. For instance, around integrating all the different, what we would traditionally call the masculine and feminine energies, but we also refer to as solar and lunar energies, is something that everybody struggles with, though they may not be conscious that they struggle with that. Um, and like the quest card is about the individuation process, which is basically becoming your authentic self, the process of becoming your authentic self. The grief card is, everyone can relate to sadness and loss. The sunset card is about completion. It's about the the final stage of alchemy, which is, that's a very Jungian concept of using alchemy in a psychological way. But everyone can relate to the idea of completing something, so I guess it's not the best. Um, So yes, the individual themes are themes that are universal. Also, they're themes that we all have struggled with or worked with in our lives. And we wrote the deck for everybody. We didn't write it for ourselves. We wrote it for everyone, and so the cards address the reader as as a person who is separate from us, who may still need the message that arose from our unconscious, from our our unconscious, unique experience of us mining our unconscious and what we discovered.
Sure, sure. So say somebody like me, I'm looking at this, and let's just say I wake up from a dream, and I don't know what your practice would be or how you would want to do this, but say I draw the Anima Mundi card, which is sort of an interesting thing, and that's sort of
Yeah, yeah.
a Jungian thing. So, and I'm looking at the image, and how do you envision somebody using the symbol on the card with not only the concept of the word Anima Mundi reflected in the picture, and then sort of my own dream? How do you envision that all sort of being put together, or not?
No, I mean, I definitely encourage to talk about the image itself, but for my part, what I'll say is that if you were to pull a card on, just say, like, the overall message of the dream, you can pull a card on a character that's in the dream and what the character might mean or what the setting might mean for you. But if you were to pull a card, you just wake up from this dream and you pull a card just for insight into the dream, and you were to get Anima Mundi, I would say several things. I might say, well, your dream might have been a dream for the collective. It might have been a dream about the collective or for the collective, but also that the theme in the dream could also be something where the what you are discovering in yourself serves the collective, because that card is about, partly it's about understanding that what fuels you, what inspires you, what you're passionate about, when you follow that, when you invest in that it serves the soul of the world. So there could be multiple ways of looking at it. But Cara, talk about the symbolism in that card and how you would look at that.
So I look at that card as being symbolic of how we are all connected to one another, and so how our choices and the way that we operate in the world can affect others and ourselves. So from one perspective, it's looking at how we make choices and how that affects other people and how we feel connected to other people and things and objects and nature and creatures. So it's an interesting card to pull if you've had a dream of it, because a dream which features something of the Anima Mundi, because I feel it's giving you possibly a reference that the dream is bigger than yourself. It might be something which is from the collective unconscious rather than being a personal dream.
what about I'm just thinking of how using a using an oracle card in relation to a dream, that's sort of like, well, because I'm thinking, I'm in a dream and I've got one set of symbols going on, and then I'm looking at another external set of symbols that's coming from the oracle card deck. Um,
I
what
think
what
that's one of the. Sorry, I'm
Oh no, go ahead.
interrupting you.
Take it from there
Yeah, no,
because I think you see what I'm pointing at. Yeah.
yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's one of the wonderful things I like about the deck and how we use it with our dreams. And when I was painting the deck as well, the imagery of certain things that came through in different ways for how I was painting it necessarily to how it might have come through in the dream. So, for example, the Beware card. When you look at the Beware card, there's a little creature who can't really see that something's coming up from behind him, and he looks like he's about to possibly get eaten. So the idea that something that you're not quite conscious of yet, you need to try and gain some consciousness of it, because otherwise the shock or something might come in to your life because you haven't gained the consciousness with it. And at the time when I was painting that card, my dreams were all about someone else driving me off a cliff. So there was a relationship between them. The images were different, but they meant the same thing. There was a need to gain greater clarity and understanding of something that I wasn't conscious of in my own life at that moment. So I hope that explains a little bit of how
Sure.
images can be different, but they can mean the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought, and I know you talk about different spreads in the book that accompanies the deck, but I'm thinking, I'm wondering if I'm waking up a dream as opposed to like using it like a tarot deck where you're picking a specific card, but rather look at all of them and see which image sort of resonates with you, perhaps. If the dream was visual, is that something that or see if any of the words sort of resonate with the dream and then sort of tied in that way? Or
Yeah, so I was been using the deck since we've created it. And so the weight card, I don't know if you've seen the weight card where there's a guy who's all hunched up and he's carrying the weight of the world on his back. And I kept pulling this card over and over again, and I was thinking, this doesn't really make much sense to me. I can't really understand it. And then I realized it was literally telling me to wait for something that I was waiting for. I needed to wait for it. And I found that really interesting because in dreams, sometimes you get odd words that pop up in a dream that they kind of stand out, and you have to look at them in a different way to what you might initially see them as. And that's exactly what happened with that card. So I completely agree with you. I think there's a way that sometimes you can look at your dreams and see which words are sticking out to you to get more insight on them.
Mm-hmm. And also what you were talking about like just spreading you have a bunch of cards and you're like looking at what image pulls you, because that's part of how you work with dreams is what is the image or the feeling in the dream that is most compelling, that really speaks to you. And it's all a very intuitive process. So if you're looking at some card images and there's a particular image that pulls you, then that becomes part of the dream too for you. It becomes part of your process of understanding the dream, but also there's something about that image that perhaps has an energy in it that wants to participate in the dream. Because sometimes a dream is, there's always hidden information. I mean, the conscious mind does not want to know what's in the unconscious. So there's a sense that there's always something hidden in the dream. And sometimes a dream is more about what is missing than it is about anything that's actually in the dream. Sometimes working with a card can help you bring up that piece that's not being heard, that missing, that hidden piece. That made sense.
like using the card as like a diamond, something that's like or some, I mean, use a different or some other symbol. I'm just trying to think of.
Um,
Like the lost piece of jigsaw, which is under under the sofa that you haven't found yet.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when you find it, you can pop it in and see a bigger bit of the picture.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
I know you guys have classes coming up on creating your own dream image. And how did how did Carl Jung um, interface with dreams in terms of did he use sort of any sort of external symbols, or did he work with internal symbols, or how did that did you have you studied that at all?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, I would say that he did. Carl Jung was a fan of divination, of divination tools like the I Ching and astrology. And I think he would use those things to understand life and people, and as a way of understanding what was going on in the unconscious also for a person. So there was in terms of understanding the unconscious, I think he did use divination tools. I'm unaware if whether or not he worked with the tarot, but um, he was definitely the most interested in the person's image, what the dream image itself. So yeah, like I would say that he was most interested in the dream image itself, but there are many ways of unpacking a dream, amplifying the images by asking questions and asking for associations. And sometimes, working with a divination tool like the oracle cards gives more opportunities to ask more questions about and it also gives an opportunity for synchronicity to come into play. So, for instance, when I'm doing my dream circles, and I work with oracle cards in my dream circles, and somebody is working on the dream, and for instance, they feel like they feel like the dream is calling them into, to be more of to own more of themselves, to understand that they're actually ready to go out into the world, and there's an image in there that asks that's what's being contemplated in the dream. As they're working on it, they're thinking, well, my association with this particular image is, there's this book in the dream, and I keep feeling like I want to, I have this manuscript, but I haven't worked on it in a long time, and I just haven't felt ready to. But there's something image in the dream that's like the sun is shining, or the sun is rising. So there's this sense that perhaps there is readiness for this book. And then I'll pull an oracle card, and it says, and the oracle card will be that you have what you already seek within you. And so this becomes a synchronistic thing where the oracle card is saying, you are ready. You are, it is time. And so the oracle card becomes a way of commenting on the dream. It's a form of amplification. And Carl Jung definitely taught us to amplify the images through questions, and also I think that can also happen through divination tools.
Do you so that this idea of divination, I thought would be interesting on using this deck as well. How would you envision somebody using this as a divination tool?
Well, you can use it as, you can do a typical past, present, future spread. You can ask about it, but you can use it as a divination tool, just the way that you would use tarot in the sense of traditional divination, of asking a question about something and receiving an answer. So if you were asking about a relationship and you pulled the wait card, you could either say, well, I have to wait to be in the relationship. It's that time. Or it could be that this person I'm contemplating being involved with would somehow be a burden for me, or it would activate, because that card is a lot about caretaking, being, unhealthy caretaking, that pattern in me would somehow be stimulated. And so I would need to address that. So you can, there's multiple levels. You can have like the more superficial level of wait, don't get involved, but then you can have the deeper level of what's going on in me, or why am I drawn to this person? Is it because, it's familiar, this caretaking pattern is familiar, and the wait card is drawing my attention to it. So, in that, I'm not sure if that answers your question, but I don't know if Cara has anything to add to that.
Just that one of the other readings that we talk about in the book is that you can lay 3 cards and have information about what's coming that you're conscious of, something that you're unconscious of, and the third way, which is the tension of the opposites, of looking when you've got things pulled in different directions, and how you can come up with a more creative and third way to the answer to your issue or problem. So in terms of divination, I think the more you're gaining awareness with that, the more you can gain greater clarity to the right way forward.
Yeah, because I think this brings into mind this idea that Carl Jung said, that what you're not conscious of will emerge as fate. If you are, we all have an unconscious, and most are not trying to figure out what is going on in it. But what is unconscious within us can fuel our lives in such a way that it appears like something is happening to us, but there's actually a way that our own energy has created it. And becoming more aware of what is going on inside of us is a way of affecting our future too. So using divination as an active of self-exploration, as a way of figuring out what is going on deep within us, is also a way of helping ourselves predict our future, quote unquote, and that we are, by having more self-awareness, we're actually creating a different outcome.
We get the element of choice in there rather than behaving through instinct.
Yes.
Which is what happens when we are working through something that is a pattern that we might keep, driving towards, but actually isn't helpful. The more that we can have sovereignty and create choices, hopefully this pack is a tool for people to do that.
I was wondering, since it is sort of an oracle deck for dreams, and then assuming that the dreaming life often feels like it's a whole nother world. If this is sort of to I don't like to bifurcate awaking life and dreaming life, but maybe have this be sort of like a divination tool or symbols for the dreaming life as a tool to understand that, where a tarot deck is we think of as more of our non-dreaming world, but maybe it's an overlap. But I was just wondering if this was be like the tarot deck for dreams, and the images, rather than being tarot images, which don't necessarily, well, I mean, that's another discussion. It's just like, is there some sort of interesting twist because this is dealing with expressly the dream world?
I think I see where you're going, and I think I understand what you're asking, and I think so. The way that we see divination is that it is a form of dreaming. Like using the cards is like dreaming the dream on, because when we're accessing the cards, we're accessing our unconscious, and dreaming is also an expression of the unconscious. So both are interacting from the same place. So I think the way that your question is saying, so it's like in a way, the oracle cards are something in waking life, that how could that be related to the dream? But the way that I see divination is that it's a way of accessing something that is already within me, the same, within us is the same way the dream is already accessing something within us. And waking dreams are very, Jungians definitely work with waking dreams too, and you can definitely see the oracle cards or pulling them as part of a waking dream also. I don't know if that's further clarifying for you.
No, it's just interesting because since these were created in your dreams, the images and that automatically means that, or it suggests, or it points to sort of maybe a different language than the norm. Well, I mean, I guess you're just drawing that since, regular oracle cards or tarot decks are all products, are all drawing on the unconscious too. But these are seem another step closer to dream world, to the dream world, because they were created with dream imagery.
Yeah,
And I'm just wondering if there's anything along those lines that's different about this. Is there a difference between the language and the structure and well, obviously there is, the semantics, the visual imageries, the language, the structure of the dream world is different than this world. Most of the time, I mean, unless you're on some sort of liminal stage, like you said, a waking dream or a hypnagogic image or something along those lines. I'm just trying to.
I think because the cards are not just the cards themselves, but it's also the book, and the book brings forward the meanings of the images that we experienced. But it's also entirely impossible for someone to look at the image and see something else. And I know oracle card readers who never look at the book. They only work with the image and what comes up for them or what comes up for the person they're reading for when they look at the image. Symbols are so powerful. They're messengers. The dream symbols are messengers of energy in the unconscious, and symbols that appear that we all have in the collective, like the spiral and the star, and they carry collective energy that's archetypal in nature. So yes, there are personal dream symbols, but the meanings in the book are meant to relate what were personal dream imagery to the collective. So it was our job in writing to make what were personal dream images into something that other people could digest or to take in or would be meaningful for them.
Would you say that when you do dream, you are touching on the collective unconscious, so that the language of dreams is automatically more sort of connective than just a purely subjective experience, because you're already tapping into something? I mean, I often feel like my dreams aren't my own anyway. They're another person, another place, another time, that type of thing.
I think I think from my experience that you get different types of dreams, and sometimes you can have, what I would call a big dream, which feels like it is tapping into the collective unconscious. And often for me, the way that I can understand that is the case is because of the imagery that's come up. Like it might feel really ancient, or there might be something in there that I didn't know about. And then through research, I've realized that there's more understanding within that image that has emerged, which the dream has already taught me something about. There's a kind of wisdom in it. So I might learn something about our history through the dream that I didn't know that I was aware of. So there's a kind of ancient collective unconscious pull into that place.
Do you find that like the sort of more the dreams you just described, where you're tapping more into the collective conscious, occur earlier on the night, and then the dreams sort of closer to wake or more sort of day to day events, or is that your experience?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think sometimes they can come really in the depths of night, and I wake up very suddenly from them, and I have that feeling of, oh, I've got to write that down, otherwise it will disappear
Right,
when I
right,
fall
right.
back to
Sure.
sleep. Yeah, that's definitely been the case. Um, yeah, it's a really good question thinking about that. I do think that sometimes they come from the deep well of nighttime. Yeah.
When you wake up, do you have this deck next to you and you pull a card sometimes and see what as an aid to helping in dream recall, perhaps?
Yes, I
Or
have. And what has been really exciting is that after finishing the deck, I have had characters emerge in my dreams from the deck, which was just really very exciting for me. That the trickster, he popped into my dreams at one point, and it was just so funny that I had sort of created this image that now arrives in the dreams. You know, I would love to hear if anyone else ever has that experience with their dreams, that they actually have certain images emerge from the cards. That would
well,
be exciting.
and I haven't done it with the cards yet, but I sometimes will wake up, in the middle of the night, and then I'll be up for an hour, and then I'll go back to sleep. And in that hour, I've started to read again, and then and I'm always reading something sort of, you know, not it's not like the daily paper. It's like some Jungian stuff or symbols or something very sort of um, uh, uh, along that ilk. And then, like you said, when you go back into the dream, the symbols or the words or the images in what you've just read will sort of provide a structure to the dream, perhaps in some form, or characters or symbols, like you said. So that would be one way to work with these cards, perhaps, if you didn't want to read, just look at symbols and then have them be like sort of some sort of spirit animal or totem or something going back in, perhaps.
Yeah, I
For
love that.
somebody that wakes up in the middle of the night and then goes back to sleep,
Yeah.
like me anyway.
No, I love that idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really wonderful idea. I know I've worked with the cards. Like, well, I'll have a dream, and say I have a lot of animus figures, like masculine figures in my dream, and um, um, then I'll pick a card that is, about the animus, and I'll know that's the important element, that there's something going on there that I need to pay attention to. So, yeah.
So tell me about some of these words and symbols in the dreams. Who came up with the words in relation to the symbols? Because some of them are interesting, like glimmer and elemental, embodied, emergence, ebb, companion. We talked about anima mundi, but
Mm.
how did the words come with the symbols?
So we wrote on the cards before coming up with the word that we would use on each card. So we had a whole um, backdrop or idea of what each card meant. So it was kind of snapshotting that for the right word that would carry that into the image. And it took time. It did take time. I
I think we
remember
did it a
we
few
did
times.
we made a lot of lists. We got really good at making lists of words and then deciding which intuitively felt right for the particular card.
Yeah, the way I remember it is that we kind of had some distance from the writing. And at least one of the times we did this, we just looked at the image in and of itself without thinking about what I was, at least I did this, what I was writing about, and what was the image what was the word that emerged. And I think, yeah, we may have done that before we even finished writing at one point too, but we did it a few times, um, thinking of the word that it would be. And it was a very intuitive process. Um, But I think Cara is more responsible for some of the more interesting names, like Kintsugi and the Glimmer, and Um,
Incantation.
Incantations,
Oh yeah.
yes. Those are Cara has more of the was has had more of the creative word ideas, I think. Yeah.
And that's what's interesting, and I this is the dynamic that I'm sort of fascinated with, and sort of the on one hand, I have sort of a phenomenological approach to dreams where I'm just seeing what's there in the dreams and trying to understand the symbols. But yet, sort of, there's this whole other practice, this magical practice, incantation practice, where you're bringing something else in to what's already there externally, whether it be a word, a card, you know, all the stuff that goes on in ceremonial magic, where you're bringing something into the equation as a way to sort of shape reality too. And so
Hmm.
that's what this, when I was thinking of the deck, in a way, part of me wants to push back about, well, I don't want people telling me what my dreams are or what the images are in the dreams because I saw them. But on the other hand, there's this sort of the fascination that, like with a tarot deck, that, like you said, a lot of times you can't see what the image is for whatever reason, and when it sort of, it sort of is allowed to come to you, or I guess that's another attribute of this, that it allows to see something that you can't see yourself. But I think there's another important aspect, that we have our own creativity of using words or symbols or something we read to shape our reality directly. And maybe all reality is just a product of this whole idea, this sort of narrative that I've got on my mind, that I need to find out what's out there and not superimpose my own beliefs or images on it. Really is, it's all just superimposed from coming from me at some point in any way. I don't know if that
Well,
I don't know
I
if that
really,
made any sense.
well, I want to address this idea that the deck is like telling you what the dream means, because it's not meant to do that. It's not like saying, oh, if you pull this card, this is what the dream means. It's just dream work is alchemy. This idea like that there is a kind of incantation quality to it, where there is the energy of the self, capital S, is very much a part of figuring of discerning the meaning of the dream. When you like it's you're trying to figure out a piece of yourself that has been hidden from you, and bring it into relationship to your own divine energy. And that experience of relating to the divine energy and coming back to yourself, relating the hidden aspect of the unconscious, is all about creating more wholeness, wholeness for yourself. The dream, the first part of the book is all about, is an introduction to dream work. And the big part of that is about looking at what are your associations to your images. What are the feelings and memories and ideas that emerge when you work with a dream character or a particular symbol? And the cards are just meant as a way to augment or amplify those experiences. Not so much as, there are decks on the market that say, if you pull this card, like, I don't know, cat, like if you pull a picture of a cat, then it, who knows what it means. Like, I have, but it's not concrete like that. It's it's much more, you're working with the ephemeral. It's not the dream. The oracle deck isn't meant to tell you what your dreams mean. It's not. It's meant to be a way of helping you access your intuition. It's like you and how you think and feel and what you see and what you perceive is an integral part of the process. And the oracle deck is just giving you one more tool for intuiting, for like it's a vehicle, it's a mediator, it's an intermediary between something that's just below the surface that you can't quite connect with and your conscious mind. I don't know if does that address any of what you were talking about? Or
Yeah. I'm still, yeah. The alchemy is still, and I'm looking at this too. There are, like you said, when you open up and just receive things, and when you incant stuff and you circle around them and you don't have to name it, then sort of things arise that are more interesting than what you are just putting words to, perhaps. But it's still. And this is the same thing that I have with uh, it's like working with the tarot deck. I mean, sometimes you see a card, and then something comes from within you and resonates and is pulled up by using the card that on its own, like you said, it would not ordinarily occur. And
yeah,
so you could be that, and I guess you could do that with just about anything. I mean, everything
exactly.
is sort of that magical symbol that you're relating to. But because these are also coming from a place of dream imagery, then they perhaps are more powerful archetypes than just trying to connect with something more pedestrian, because these are tapping into Jungian archetypes, some of them directly.
I
And so
think,
that
yeah.
go ahead.
No, I'm just thinking what you're saying. Thinking about the tarot and the oracle deck. It just makes me think with the tarot, you've got the major arcana, where you're tapping into the major themes or archetypes within the first, within the major arcana. And then the minor arcana are usually not quite so, they're more like the daily themes or things like that. So it does make me think that with the oracle deck, the archetypes within there, they have, like the major arcana in the tarot, they work more in that way rather than the individual minor arcana. I don't know if that makes more sense to it, because they've come from a deep place. It makes me think of the lifeblood, which is one of the cards, which is which relates to the archetype of the negative animus in Jungian psychology. I mean, that comes from a really deep place, and that's not something that you would necessarily find within the tarot and the major arcana. And that's more related to the Jungian ideas or depth psychology.
And that's a beautiful picture too. The lifeblood is visceral.
It's nice to hear it was a scary dream, and it was good to move it through the creative process. Yeah. Which I think is another thing which I think there's a lot about within our book and with the deck. It's how you work with dreams and how you work with them creatively. So it becomes a flow. So you're allowing these things through you. I think the more you flow, the more you're then, as Marion Woodman would say, being in the conscious feminine and being present to the heart and allowing things to move rather than being stuck in our loops and patterns.
And I think
so. I like to think of it as a vehicle for creativity as well. I like that.
And I think a lot of the images that you have are much more. They sort of more embody the feminine sort of energy than a lot of the, like you said, the major and minor arcana of the tarot deck. Those are sort of more hierarchical, perhaps, especially when you get to the minor arcana. and less sort of. I mean, it's I mean, thinking about the words embodied or emergence or elemental, those all might be present in the tarot deck, but they're sort of hidden behind hierophants and other things.
Yeah,
Whereas
yeah,
where
yeah.
your deck, they're right with imagery and a lot of the the my, with my sort of association with a tarot deck. I'm not so much interested in the idea or the what the which suit it is or which planetary alignment it is. It's like I'm looking at the picture anyway, almost to see what
Yeah.
resonates with me. So yeah, yeah. So how what can you maybe talk about some of the spreads that you'd use with this and how and how you would use it in that purpose?
Well, I think one of the spreads that I really like the most is whether the ego self. What is the ego? What is the ego's way of, or how is the ego perceiving a situation, or what is the ego element in the dream with the self, which is the archetype of wholeness. It's my inner divinity. It's the inner divinity and our innate nature of wholeness. And what does that aspect of us want to see from the dream or the situation? So those two, holding both those two, can be very interesting. There's can be an alchemy in just asking the question and getting two cards about it, and how do those energies connect to each other. And then there is the third, the tension of the opposite spread, which Cara already talked about, of the two opposing forces in the situation, and then the third card of like what is the third voice, which is often about the authentic self. Who am I becoming as a result of wrestling with these opposite forces? Then there's the what is the dream? I can't remember what we actually called it. But what is the end of the dream? What is the dream? Where is the dream taking me? Where is the dream taking me? Because married women talked about that the end of the dream always has the energy. It's the energy of where consciousness wants to go, how we want to evolve. And so picking different cards for the elements in the dream, and then a final card for where is the dream going. So you can look at the interaction of all the different cards, and then how they all interact with the final element of where the dream is taking the dreamer. And then the wholeness spread, because the whole point of dream work and of Jungian psychology is to become more whole. So each card in the wholeness spread is for a different, it can be for a different aspect of the dream or a different part of life, of body, mind, spirit, of work, or it can be a different component of the dream, and how those are all working together for more wholeness, so that we can experience more wholeness. Did I forget anything, Cara?
I think you did a good job.
Okay.
And the book itself contains not only the descriptions, but then the Kara's description of the artwork too, which I thought was really interesting.
Yes,
And
that was really important for us to have that. Yeah.
so how would you advise Kara people to look at your description of the artwork in interfacing with their dreams, perhaps, or interfacing with the card in their dreams?
Um, so you're saying when someone pulls a card, how they want to relate to it?
Right, and specifically, your description of the artwork, is that like
Yeah.
that's in the book?
So I think when I create the artwork, I sometimes like to pull more out from the image. So I enjoy writing a bit about the image, and sometimes it becomes a bit of poetry, or just seeing it more in a creative way. I think it was important for me to give people just an idea of where I was coming from with the image. And when Melissa and I were writing, initially I had some images and we would both write on it and go away and write on the image and then come back together, and we'd find that we had similar parallels with what the image was. So the image was clearly communicating something which was understandable and relatable too. So hopefully when people read my part of talking about the card, it just gives them another way of looking at it, which also means the same thing, but another perspective.
I think I can speak also that Cara has just much more of a poetic way of expressing herself and expressing what the card means. She's also very interested in mythology and literary associations, and so there's she brings those elements to her interpretations of the card. I have a magazine writing background, and I mean, I still have many years of being trained to put things into a more easily digestible package, which is a good thing. It definitely serves for more straightforward communication, but it can not have that sense of poetic nuance that I think Cara's way of writing has. And so the hope is that because we have a different perspective on each image, just slightly, different, we bring in different elements, that if one if my description doesn't resonate with somebody, or Cara's description doesn't resonate with somebody, then one of the other ones will, that, and that's been the truth for, when I've been working with the cards with clients and with friends too, that if one sense of the card doesn't really speak to them, then the other will. Yeah. Like for instance, in the solar card, there's a sense about I think my version of that card is a lot about really accessing animus energy, the goal oriented, directed energy, and really going out there and doing and using that energy to get something, to accomplish a goal. And Cara's version of that is more about really feeling good about yourself and being okay with having attention placed on yourself, like the energy of the sun, and knowing that it's not egoic to really feel good about what you've accomplished. And so they're both about animus energy, but they're different. And I know when I pulled that card for someone, they didn't at all resonate with my version, but they resonated with Cara's very much. I think, and that's an unusual thing for a deck, that usually the artist doesn't really have a voice unless they are the one who's putting out the deck. But usually if there's usually just one writer, not two. And I like the idea that, having two different voices, very distinct voices, can augment, how the deck speaks to people.
Yeah. Isn't there like a Jungian concept with that too, where like the magic happens between the two ideas?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the
Right.
tension of the opposites. And that's a wonderful point, because the person who's doing the reading then becomes the third voice, which is exactly what is supposed to happen. So that, there's Cara's writing, there's my writing, and then there's the person doing the reading and how they interact with all that. And that energy is the most, the alchemy happens right there in the spaces in between, where, that the person who's doing the reading, interacting with all those different elements, and then coming to their own sense of what it means for them as an individual. What is it resonating for them? And that becomes that third ineffable way that is only unique to that moment of that reading and that person in that moment of time.
Yeah. And then you pan out and everybody's doing that and you got a big tapestry.
Exactly. That's
Lovely.
exactly. And then we're back to the anima mundi, aren't we?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Back
that's
to
what
The anima
well,
mundi.
again,
And if ever, just imagine if the whole world were doing that, and we each get a thread of these beautiful insights, and that we're weaving together, and all this becomes part of the soul of the world.
well, it's probably what's happening.
It is. I know it is. That
I'm just
does.
stuck. I'm just stuck in my little.
Yeah.
Stuck in my little patch of goo.
Well, we all are. We're all stuck in our little patches of goo,
Yeah.
but also, but it's like, but when we start to work with a consciousness and with our inner worlds, and we can start to understand, and with our dreams, we start to understand that we're much more than just our little patches of goo too. And I think that's part of the great healing power of working with dreams and working with symbols, is coming to that understanding.
Well, since we started with Anima Mundi and ended with it, do you want to talk a little bit about the programs you've got coming up with the DreamWork imagery and stuff, and on your website?
Well, the workshop that we're doing tomorrow is just it's just it's an in-person one, so we don't have an online program yet. We haven't planned on that. We
Okay.
haven't gotten to that place yet. So yeah.
Well, the tapestry's spreading out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you so much for having us and for asking such wonderful questions.
Well, thanks for indulging me on this. I just it's that like I said, this dynamic is sort of the external and the internal one is a interesting thing, which is still resonating with me. But
I
that's
think
another
there's
story.
something. I know it's probably too late to insert this, but I
It's
think
never too late.
if
It's
I,
never
but
too
like
late.
part of my belief about this is that the external reflects the internal, and so that what's going on externally can reflect what's going on internally. And I would say that was a pretty Jungian way of looking at things. I think that's also part of how the oracle cards fit into that, like that they are an external element, but they can still reflect what's going on internally.
Because everything reflects from everything.
Yeah, exactly.
And just food for thought.
Yes.
So now I know you both have websites because I've already looked at them. So where can people go to get more information? Because I know that Cara has some interesting art in addition to this. So
So my artist website is www.cararoxanne.com, and then we've got the Dreaming Oracle website, which is www.thedreamingoracle.com. And then Melissa, you've got your website as well, haven't you?
Which is the night is young, as in Carl Jung, JUNG.com.
Yeah,
and
that's great. I love that because that is like because I mean that is just saying like the night is the collective unconscious.
Exactly. That's where we access the collective unconscious. The night is, yes, exactly. That is where we access the collective unconscious. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, Cara and Melissa, thank you very much. And Cara, I hope you're enjoying your stay. And is this sunny California?
Yeah. Very much. It's lovely.
Yes.
Really nice.
I've heard it's a little hot out there, depending on where
you're at. I don't mind. It's lovely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you very much,
And thanks for the
Michael.
wonderful
Yeah. Thank you.
All right.
external reflection of the internal that
Yeah.
you've provided everyone.
Well, thank you.
This is the End of the Road podcast with your host, Michael Coco. Exploring the horizons we never touch because we're already there.